What's up, everyone? It's Dr. Glenn Vo. I am super excited to have this orthodontist on my podcast. Before I get into this episode, I'd like to give a shout out to one of our sponsors, DocSites. Now, having a website is super important for your practice, but it doesn't have to be expensive. DocSites has been hooking us up with amazing deals with websites for a long time. Go check them out and make sure you ask for the Nifty Thrifty deal. So before I introduce him, let me ask you guys something here. Are you doing clear aligners or any kind of orthodontic work in your practice? Are you someone who actually refers to orthodontists and then you take care of them after the recare? And do you ever run into this situation where they have retainers, but either A, they lost it, B, their dog ate it, or C, it just, gets destroyed and you got to make another one and you're like, man, I have to do this. If you are in any of those categories, and if you answered yes to any of those things, I have the guess for you, because he has created a system to make dentists, our lives easier when it comes to retainers. It's Dr. Blair Feldman, founder of Retainer Club. He's in the house. Blair, what's up, man? Welcome to Nifty Thrifty Dentists Podcast.
Glenn, I am so excited to be here. It started with the shoes right behind you, and the value and excitement keeps coming. I love it. I love your energy.
Well, I'll tell you what. So again, I was so excited to have you on because you're the founder of Retainer Club. And when we first met, I said, man, I love the idea. I've never heard about it. And you're like, look, man, this is something I'm passionate about. I'm doing this myself. But you know what? I'm not doing it justice by trying to explain how you came up with this idea. I will let you, the man behind the idea, what gave you, number one, the idea behind Retainer Club and why you're so passionate about making sure that, not only you, but the other orthodontists that are your peers, that you guys do such a great job, but you don't want issues with like relapse and things going over. You want to make sure, and then you want to make our lives easier because, to be honest, I mean, yeah, I do make our own retainers, but it does take time and like sometimes I forget about it. I'm thinking about like other things as a general practice dentist. Talk about the idea, the genesis behind Retainer Club, and honestly, like what your main mission is with this company.
Yeah, I love it. So my background, I'm an orthodontist, and I've done some interesting things along the way. So I've been doing orthodontics for 24 years. My wife and I were the team orthodontist for the Phoenix Suns and the Arizona Diamondbacks. So we've been involved in sports dentistry. That was fun. We did that for 3 years. I taught orthodontics at the university here in Mesa, Arizona for 8 years. I've written some articles for Orthotown and Dental Town. So, and it's funny when I taught, people always ask me, what do you love about orthodontics? What do you love about dentistry? And it's exactly this. You're the host of the podcast. You've got this entire, universe here you've created. And you can do that as a dentist. And I was able to start and develop 3 beautiful practices, transitioned all of them to great docs. And along the way, I had a challenge in my practice that I was just sort of staring at. And this entrepreneurial thing is interesting because I think almost every dentist and every orthodontist I've met, you're problem solvers, right? Yeah. They figure out ways to solve problems every single day. Sometimes they're things that, are just amazing solutions. Sometimes they sort of try and fizzle out. And other times they actually turn into something that you can develop, beyond just your practice. And that's what Retainer Club was. It was a challenge I had as an orthodontist. It was people, me finishing these cases, having great relationships with my patients, and then realizing they're like, so how long does this retainer last? And what happens, if I lose or break them? And, we were so focused at that time on building the practice. So it's basically getting new patients that we just thought of retainers as an afterthought and sort of a low value item. And so we'd be like, bye, like call us when you need us. And that was the end of it. And so right around the time, and I'm a tech junkie, and I'm sure this theme will come out throughout our conversation. So I was an early adopter of 3D scanning. In fact, we started, I don't know if you ever were involved in this, when it was like powder based. You had to powder the teeth. It was just alcohol-based powder, and it burned the patients because it was like had to burn off the alcohol and like left the powder so the scanner could work. It took about 40 minutes. we still liked it better than impressions. I mean, what we know as dentists is like the three things that patients hate worst are shots, impressions, and of course, the fee that we all think is way too little, but they think is way too much. So right around the time that 3D scanning and 3D printing was coming out, we were on it, and I started realizing as we made the switch that basically all the retainers fit, which wasn't true for us when we were doing alginate. A good amount fit, but not all of them.
Yeah.
So I started thinking like, if all these retainers fit, maybe I don't have to see them, or maybe I can just deliver to them. And if I can deliver, I can charge less. And if I can charge less, maybe they'll replace them more often, or that maybe they won't have that challenge where, they lose their retainers, they call the office, they find out it's $500 in 2 appointments, and they're like, no, I'm just not going to do it. And then, their teeth move. And, the orthodontists have very unique challenges with these patients. We don't get to see them like the general dentist. My wife's a general dentist, does a fair amount of aligner therapy, like many dentists do, which is, I think, amazing. And, our services work just as well in dental practices as they do in orthodontic practices. And this idea that we can replace retainers, we can do it affordably, we can do it without the patient having to come in, was really the birth. And then it took me partnering up with my oldest friend in Phoenix, who's not a dentist, not an orthodontist. He's a patent attorney by training. And then he went on to become the CEO of a consumer product company that he grew from $10 million to $1 billion valuation in 3 years. It became Arizona's third unicorn behind GoDaddy and U-Haul. So he's an incredible business guy, an incredible business mind. And the two of us sort of thinking about this idea, how can we actually take the idea of a retainer replacement and make it sort of like Dollar Shave Club. You replace your razor, you need to replace your razor, you need to replace your retainer. So that's where we came up with Retainer Club. I used to joke that, for a little while in there, a hot minute in there, as my son would say, we were getting there was an accusation towards us that we were part of Smile Direct Club, which we never were. And it was only because we had club in the name. And I think the biggest thing for people to understand, and this is the way we undid that misconception, is because we said we're a B2B2C business. We don't sell anything direct to the consumer. We only go through our partner network of dentists and orthodontists. So with that idea in mind, Craig and I developed Retainer Club. And it's been 8 years. We've got over 100,000 patients in the system. We've really learned a lot. The other joke that I sort of tell is that, I thought dentistry was complicated and hard, and that's why I became a specialist. I just wanted to be really good at one thing. And apparently I thought orthodontics was hard, so I just specialized in retainers, and I don't know where I can go from here. Maybe I'll just do like upper arch only or something. Figure out how to get really good at that. But I think I'm going to stick with upper and lower for now.
Well, I love that. And thank you so much for just sharing that whole story. Because again, for those who are watching and listening right now, look, whether you feel like you are or not, if you have a practice, you are an entrepreneur, right? You may not think it, maybe when you initially started your practice, you're like, look, I'm a clinician. But once you put your name on that lease, you're an entrepreneur. And naturally, what I love with just kind of like the evolution of your career, you've embraced that. Now, with that being said, now if you understand that you're an entrepreneur, you're a business owner, there's so many different hats you got to wear. And if you can outsource some of those things, look, you're already outsourcing some of those things to your staff. Maybe you're outsourcing to a third party doing all these things. Now, with retainers, right? Again, that is another thing that you have to think about. But from a clinical standpoint, we all can agree that if the patient doesn't wear the retainer, then things are going to change and they're not going to be in the right clinical space, right? So I love this idea because it's almost like set it and forget it. And again, you guys make it so affordable that patients aren't thinking twice. Look, we have to charge what we have to charge because we have that overhead. But explain to those who are watching who are thinking like, okay, I can do it in my practice. Maybe I have a 3D printer, but there's certain economies of scale that you guys have that you can make it more affordable. Explain that part, because as dentists, everyone's thinking about, okay, all right, I'm game for this, but can they really do it that much cheaper? Explain to them how you guys can make it cheaper and honestly, how it can benefit the practice.
Yeah, you hit on a lot of really important points, and I could probably go on in a book for this. Probably should make a book. It might help my business a little bit. But the first one you mentioned was outsourcing. So obviously, as dentists, as orthodontists, we outsource, and sometimes we think, well, I can make a retainer, and you might have a 3D printer or a thermoform machine or a combination and all those things. And that's amazing. I think there's a place for that. In fact, of our partners, I would say more than half make some form of retainers, even limited aligners in their practice, just because it's cost efficient. They've made the decision, in this scenario, we don't outsource. And in this other scenario, we outsource. So, I have practices that believe, and I'm not saying it's good or bad, that, a patient, when they get out of treatment, maybe get out of braces or aligners, they should have a great fitting retainer in like a matter of hours. Well, we certainly can't do that. We've got about a week turnaround time to get those to the office. So they have their system. It works great. Where our specialty really comes in is the entire system. So that's where it gets a little more interesting in terms of outsourcing. Like, you could certainly do all your retainers through us and never make a retainer again, and close up your lab and turn it into a space, add a marketing person that may be in there, or some sort of development for your practice. And that's great. And some of our practices go that path, and the other ones use us for the long-term regular replacement of their patients' retainers, basically answering that question: what happens when I lose my retainer?
Yeah.
If the answer is, you got to call our office, you got to come in either 1 or 2 times, to leave work or school, make that happen, that's a pain point. And, they may or may not decide to do it. And of course, the higher the fee, the less likely they are to do it. And the less likely they are to do it, the more likely their teeth are going to shift. And who are they going to blame? Are they going to blame themselves? No, they're going to blame you and basically the practice. So what we come in and do is offer a system. It's easy on the team. It's easy to onboard the patients into the retainer club system. It's a free process. Basically, scan this QR code. We'll give you free registration to Retainer Club. What they do is they're going to match your 3D scan and your registration. And that way, when you need to order a retainer, when you want to replace your retainer, you can just go online and order and have it shipped to your house. So that kind of convenience is a huge value right there.
I love that. And again, okay, so I'm glad that, and the reason why I phrased the question that way is because I want everyone who's listening right now, like, why it makes sense, okay, from a workflow standpoint. Because, okay, yeah, you finish the case, or maybe that you refer to an orthodontist, they finish a case, the patient leaves, they have a retainer, right? Mm-hmm. We understand that, right? And the thing is that Blair understands that too. Where they come in is, what about the years down the line? Are you going to remember? Are they, and again, some patients, I see these patients too. They come in, they have this old retainer they had for years. I'm like, dude, you had to replace that a long time ago. And what's cool about Retainer Club is that they take the guesswork out there, they do the follow-up, and that's there. Okay. So I want to set the stage. For those who are watching, you understand, you see the value there. The value is, look, we understand, our Retainer Club understands, you can make a retainer. Mm-hmm. That's cool. We're not taking that away. They're not taking that away. What they want to do is, what about the 6 months from now, the year from now, exactly, when you are like thinking about other things and you kind of forget, and one day when they come in, they say, Doc, my retainer broke. And it's been years later, and they've been wearing like a retainer that probably doesn't fit anymore. Maybe it's cracked or something like that. And then there's relapse, and then it goes back to what Blair just said. Like, they're not going to point the fingers and say, they're saying, you, why is this canine out of place now? What's all that? It's because I've been wearing this retainer. Okay, so now that we established that,
right,
now we have to establish what everyone is always thinking. What I thought when I first met Blair, I was like, well, how do I make some money? It sounds like you're taking money out of my pocket. Yeah. Right? Like, why would I want to do that? And if you listen carefully, Blair said, look, this is not Smile Direct Club where it's straight to the patient.
Right.
We're working through you guys. So now explain from an economic standpoint why it makes sense for the practice owner to work with you guys at Retainer Club.
Yeah, I mean, so I love the way you're laying this out for, listeners. I think what's really important to understand too is the flexibility that we built into our system. So we understand that everybody's different. You have a 3D printer, you don't have a 3D printer. The system can handle that. What's interesting is if you take like a small snapshot of your practice and the day-to-day stuff that happens and the patients that finish, aligner therapy in your practice. So of course you deliver the retainers, and we believe that patients start wearing retainers. We don't think it's a compliance issue. The question happens is, what happens when the retainer breaks, gets lost, gets gross, you got COVID, you got strep, and you're not sure how to clean it. You don't want to wear it. What happens then? And if the process is simple, it's like, oh, I have Retainer Club, I can just log in and get another set because that's what I want. This is happening behind the scenes. And I think that's where the economics get really interesting. What we look at with Retainer Club is really an incremental business that basically it's a new column in your P&L called online sales that's adding to everything you're doing every day inside your practice. So you have a 3D printer and a patient comes in and they say, I need a retainer quick. I'm leaving for, travel tomorrow and I need it. And you have the ability to do it. What an amazing service, and you should charge a appropriate amount for that. Now, Retainer Club, is basically that back end support for the patients that's on the phone and say, hey, I'm in Las Vegas and I'm going to be here for 2 months for work. And I lost my retainer. I need a retainer. I mean, can you just send one to me? With Retainer Club, you can say, absolutely. I'm going to send you a link and you're going to fill it out and you'll have a retainer to your, place you're staying at, in less than a week. It's kind of amazing. So the economics there's a few parts of Retainer Club that are really interesting. One, I would say, is just that single, retainer that somebody needs. That example I just gave you. So a few parts of that. One, the fees that you set in your practice are custom. You create a price book. We help you do that through our system. It's not that many things. It's a single set of retainers. What are you going to charge for that? I would say, and one of the things I think is interesting actually is we're getting through our data and we share it with our partners. What are the fees that are actually doing the best? Because we have some people that come in and say, retainer $250 for an upper and lower. That's a good deal for a patient. I think that's where I want to be. And that's close to, I think our average fee for a set, an upper and a lower is about $300. And then we have some that are like, I'm in New York City, $300, people are actually going to think it's cheap. Like they're going to think it's not good quality. So, we have to charge $600. That's what, we charge. And that's great. You create a custom price book. Our fee is flat. So it's not a percentage, it's a flat fee and it's all inclusive. So I think that's the other challenge we have. And, we'll talk about this in a little later when I've got a great idea and a great offer for your listeners. But this idea that we're not just a lab. So, I mean, if you want to pigeon us into a lab hole, a lot of docs think the most important thing is how much I'm paying per arch, and to me, in my mind as a doctor, I'm thinking, well, that's the plastic and maybe some staff time and that's it. And maybe the staff time's free because I'm getting them to do this when they're like, on their lunch break or the office is slow. So our fee's flat. It includes the retainers, the packaging, the shipping to the patient, all of the lab services. There's no annual fees for Retainer Club. It's just every time a patient purchases, we take out our fee and you win. So that's one of them. The other one is through our educational sequences, both email to these patients that register and text messaging. And it's very light. I wouldn't say it's heavy-handed at all. It's meant to just supplement what you're doing in your practice. It's very focused on the benefits of wearing a retainer, replacing it. We incentivize these patients. We encourage them to come back and make regular purchases. And if they want to get a discount on more, they can purchase more and see that discount savings. So that becomes that recurring revenue that's coming in. And again, you're not even, doing anything to do this. It's our system, incentivizing those patients to choose more than one versus just a single one. And that's just mailbox money to your practice.
So, let me kind of just dive in a little bit deeper because again, some people who are watching this right now, it's like, okay, I kind of get it. I kind of don't understand it. So I'm going to clarify a couple of things where I think people would get confused. So look, Retainer Club you have your fees, right? Which is, of course, whatever your fees are, cost of doing business and whatnot. Mm-hmm. So for a participating practice, they could upcharge from those fees.
Yep.
And collect the whatever is on top of that. That's custom to any practice. I just want to make sure that's clear. That's how things work.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, that's exactly right. So again, I'll use an example, but people are going to be listening to this for a long time, and fees change over time. But let's just say our fee for a set of retainers is $99. It includes an upper and a lower and everything, and you charge $300. You're going to get $200 sent to you or, sent to your office. And, for those of you, those math people with the very sharp pencils who are trying to write this out, I mean, you're making over 60% profitability on that. Because what's the lift on your office to do this? It's very minimal.
Yeah.
So this becomes profit. So, that's just a rough example. And there's discounts as practices purchase more. But what's really important is that our mission is to make it simple on your practice to support your patients. And when they need to come in, because there are many times, the most common question we get asked is, well, what happens if it's 2 years later and the retainer doesn't fit? And on our side, we ask them two simple questions. Have you had any dental work done? Or has it been more than 2 weeks since you've worn your retainer? If the answer is yes to either of those, we say, you need to go back to the practice. It might involve a scan. It'll probably involve a fee. Once you get that scan, we'll remake that retainer for you.
And the beauty of that, guys, is look, life happens, right, to some of these patients. And maybe they went and got some other work done somewhere, maybe overseas or whatnot. But that gives you an opportunity It gives you an opportunity, retainer club gives you an opportunity to re-engage with that patient. Maybe there's this patient had moved. So maybe this is an opportunity, again, if you have an abundance mindset, you may get a patient who moved somewhere and you get a new patient there, or maybe one of your patients went somewhere else and they didn't have a dental home. And now this gives them an opportunity to get introduced to a new dental home, right? These things type of happen. So what I love about this program, and thank you so much for laying everything out and being open and transparent. That's the thing. When I first met Blair, I mean, he was open and transparent about everything. And I want you guys to understand that's how he operates here. And what the beauty of this for practices is, look, I mean, you might not even be thinking about this. You're thinking about like, hey, I have this veneer prep, or I have this implant case. I have all these. You're thinking about those things. You're not thinking about, I wonder if Billy is ready for his next retainer, right? Although maybe you are, maybe you're not. Most of the time, I can talk about this because I'm a general dentist as well. My wife's a dentist as well. I can tell you, I'm not thinking about their retainers. I mean, their retainers working, they're good. But in reality, if you think about it, those things with all the wears going through, people, I'm sure the majority of your patients need to replace that. That takes all the guesswork out. Retainer Club does that. They will follow up. Because again, as much as you say that you're going to have your team do it, come on, let's be real here. They're thinking about filling the schedule. They're not looking to see who needs a retainer, right? So what happens? That gets put on the wayside. And this is like what Blair says. This is like mailbox. This is like money you didn't have before, mailbox money. And guess what? You don't have to do much of the work. Now, Blair, I have to ask you this one question, and people are probably thinking about this, is that, okay, how many cases do I need to, like, I mean, from the person who sends one to the person who's like a power user, and they have like hundreds upon hundreds and thousands on thousands of patients being sent to you. How does that work? Because I'm not going to mention any names, but like there's some aligner companies that will ding you if you don't send enough cases, and you become like a second class citizen in their eyes, right? How does that work with Retainer Club as far as the volume goes?
Yeah. So again, it's totally flexible. You really don't see a fee. You only see revenue, but the only time those are charged is when you use the system. So we certainly have those dabblers, those people that find the utility in this, for those specific patients. And then we have these more, I would call them, power users or regular users that basically are making this. First of all, they're thinking bigger picture, like what is a thermoform retainer? It's not just an orthodontic retainer, right? It could be a veneer guard if you do, extensive cosmetic work and you want to make sure they don't chip or damage those. It could be, a grinding guard, a bruxism piece. Knowing that and knowing those people all have to replace these pieces, and there's a possibility they'll all lose and break them. Where are these opportunities in your practice? And so I think the power users are the ones that think about this comprehensively, when it comes to promoting new features or services in the practice, whether it's a newsletter or, text messaging or, whatever it is on the bottom of your statements, what's the new feature in your office is a great new feature to offer. Hey, do you wear retainers? You don't have to be our patient for orthodontics. You can order a set of retainers through us. And we're happy to connect you with the great service we're providing. There's so many opportunities. So, whether you're a general dentist or an orthodontist, we see practices that are generating, $1,000 a month. And that's nice. And then we see others that are, easily 5 digits and getting close to 6 digits. So it's really interesting in that aspect. The other thing is, data is really our foundational element. We're sharing it. One of the most interesting ones we had is practice sales over the weekend. And, we've been reaching out to our partners just to let them know, hey, did you realize in the last 12 months, you had $8,000 of weekend sales? That's kind of cool. And why is that happening? It's because the patients know they have, this free membership to Retainer Club. They know the scan's on file. And when they realize a retainer's lost or broken or they need it, it's on a weekend instead of having to wait till Monday.
Or call the office. I mean,
call
come
the
on.
office. Exactly. They were going online, they're ordering.
That.
And, money's coming in, to your practice as that occurs. So, it takes a little retooling, rethinking, like, how am I going to use this in my practice? What are the unique facets of my practice that this could fit into and actually, really develop into something really interesting. And of course, we always consider the retainer an interesting, Trojan horse into just the conversation of orthodontics in general. A lot of people have had orthodontics, had a retainer, stopped wearing the retainer, teeth moved, and, they're looking for a new orthodontic home. And whether it's, your dental practice or an orthodontic practice, the ability to say, do you want a retainer to hold your teeth, or do you want to see changes in your teeth? That, sort of, bifurcation in the conversation opens the door to some really interesting conversations that are far beyond the revenue of Retainer Club and really represent opportunities in your practice.
I love it. I love it. Okay, so before we get into how people get started, I mean, I can't have an entrepreneur like yourself on the Nifty Thrifty Dentist Podcast without asking you the Entrepreneur 3, which is 3 questions I ask every guest, because, we want our listeners and viewers to know, look, I mean, we're going to learn about what you're passionate about, but we're going to pick your brain and level up our business and level our lives as well. So the first question I'm going to ask you is, give me an entrepreneur tip or tool. Could be like an app you use, or maybe it's like a routine that that helps you become more efficient, that you would recommend and share with one of our with our listeners and viewers.
Yeah, so I told you this was going to come back. The tech nerd is going to share tech ideas. So I'm an AI junkie. I've tried just about everything. I probably watch an hour or so of AI updates every week, on YouTube. My favorite piece to use, and I use it every single day. I use Claude. I like Claude as my AI tool. And I use it as a thought developer for myself. So I ask Claude to be my thought partner in thinking about an idea. And I give it, some sort of, reference of what I'm thinking about. And I say, challenge me on how this would work. And then when I'm done, I say, challenge me on what the problems are and how it's not going to work. And since I've been doing this, and I've been doing this for, several months now, I feel like I have an advisory board that's right at my fingertips anytime I have an idea. And I can easily weigh the pros and cons. So I love Claude. I love AI. I love, really using it in ways, not just, solve this difficult math problem, or let me put a table in here and analyze it for me. It's becoming my thought partner and my advisory board.
I 100% love that. What I also love to use, and I still use ChatGPT. I like the one with like the original, but what I like to use with ChatGPT is I listen to a lot of audiobooks. So I listen to a lot of audiobooks, and what I do is I have ChatGPT create a study guide that goes with the audiobook. So that way, while I'm listening, I'll go back to the study guide. I'll see all the key points, and eventually, what happens is, if the audiobook and the study notes, if I really, really love that book, then I go and back and actually read the book. And so it gives me an opportunity to kind of like sample so many different books. And then really, the ones I really like, I will buy it. I'll put it on my shelf right over there. And those are the books I flip through again. So it's amazing how fast and how immersive like AI has become in our lives, right? We look at look, I mean, you and I close to the same age, and I remember like back in the day dialing up with AOL and Net Zero, and you're like waiting forever, but once you got online, you're like, this is amazing, right? I feel like AI has done that for this generation of people, that what the internet has done for us.
And we're just getting started, right?
It's crazy. It's
exciting.
crazy. So I love that, and I think that's something that everyone should do. I'm actually going to adopt that too. I didn't even think about having it as a thought partner, where you ask like, what could go wrong, what could go right here, and just do that. I love that. I'm definitely going to use that tip. Now, the next thing I want to ask you is share a book or a resource that has been impactful for you that you would recommend to other people.
So I'm the same as you. So I'm an Audible guy. I listen to books when on my ride, or if I'm working out. And then if I really like it, I go back and buy the book, because I feel like sometimes my mind wanders a little bit when I'm listening to books and I'm missing some of the details. So if I love the essence of it, I'll go back and buy it. So the recent one, staying on this theme, is The AI Driven Leader, I think it's by Jeff Wood. Amazing book on both, how to bring AI into your business. You might be thinking about this for your team. How do I make my dental team more productive? How do I introduce them to that? How do I help them to level up? He really gives a very clear instructional guide as both a leader and different ideas to follow when bringing this onto your team, not specifically dental team, but any team you have. So he's amazing. And I did go out and bought the book because I felt like I wanted to get deeper into that. And I feel like reading it does help me get a little deeper discovery on that level.
I definitely need to look at again. This is probably one of my favorite parts of this segment is because I'm always looking for other books,
Hmm.
and a lot of times I read a certain type of book all the time, but when I hear other people's recommendation, I'm like I'm going to do that too. So this is definitely something I want to get as well. So I appreciate you sharing that. My next one here, and this one is might be kind of like a hard question, but again, when we go on social media, when you get on social media, you always see everyone celebrating like their wins, right? Like, hey, look how my practice did, or look what I did, look what my kids are doing, look at this vacation doing. A lot of times when you get on social media and you watch other people jumping on podcasts, they're talking about all the great things that they're doing, right? But in reality, all the great things that we do, all the accomplishments, they lay on a foundation of like failures, right? And so I like to ask all my guests, share a mistake or a failure or something that you had that you learned something significant from. I truly feel that we learn from the mistakes of others. So share one. If you're like me, Blair, you probably have a ton of them, right? So when people
I
ask me
was
that, I was
just
like,
going to say, I was like, this
which,
podcast is not long enough
yeah,
for
which
me to
decade do
celebrate
you
all the
want?
mistakes.
Which
Yeah,
decade do you want? I give you a whole bunch of mistakes I made, but share one that comes to your mind that you think other people can take something from.
yeah. I mean, just to add to that a little, I would say, what Glenn said earlier about everyone who has their own dental practice, you are entrepreneurs. And on the path to success on that, one thing I have learned is to just do what you just said. You have to celebrate those mistakes. Take it, figure out a few things you got from it that are good, a few things that you're going to change and grow. My son used to say when he was playing sports, learn or grow. I mean, that's how the outcome of the game. You didn't win or lose; it's learn or grow. Win or grow. You know how it goes. So, yeah, I mean, there are so many. But the reality is, I think if I think of some early ones that are probably the deepest mistakes that I think I would, if I could go back and change, probably the biggest one as a dental practice owner is learn about your personal money, get into that personal money quickly. Really, it's worth the time, not just practice revenue and things like that, but making that plan for personal money, understanding money and how it's going to go. I mean, I think there's no other more important thing. I remember, I mean, when I went through dental school, I thought it was expensive. We were just talking about this. I had my 25-year anniversary. And I remember, we were so crazed that it was $40,000 a year tuition in dental school, and now I think that school is like 100 plus. But it seemed daunting and it seemed crazy, but really, and you want to like reward yourself when you get out. I want to get that car, I want to get that house,
Yeah.
vacation. That's great. You should reward yourself. However, really learn and understand that money, and not just if you're married, make sure not just your spouse is part of that team. I think that's really important. I got a million more, but I'll save it just for one. You and I can talk about it some other time when we meet up.
I Man, that is huge. That is so huge. And what you just said, like hey, when you get out and you want to buy that car, right? You've been itching for that car, right? But maybe if you practice a little bit of self restraint, I tell a lot of new grads, I was like, look, you've been broke this long. What's another year, right? Like you've been broke this wrong. You've been eating ramen noodles for that long. Now you've elevated. Now you can actually go out and get real ramen like out at a restaurant. Like you can do that, okay? But you don't have to take the leap from eating ramen noodles to like now I'm gonna get myself like a Mercedes or something. Like you don't have to take that leap. You can take like smaller leaps. You can actually go out to eat now, right? You can actually
You can
take
try
your
to
wife.
picture how you're going to want to feel in 5 and 10 years. Do you want to feel like, man, I'm pissed that I bought that car? Or do you want to feel like, that was really smart. I kept going with the ramen. I upgraded to restaurant pasta. But I didn't go out and get the steak every single night of the week, at the fancy steak place. I think thinking about those things and how you want to feel later, of course, it's easy for me when I'm looking back, but, back to the original comment, I have the mistakes. I got the scars to prove it. If I could change a few things, those would be some of the things I'd change.
I love it. I love it. Well, I mean, this is a great segue into, again, for those who are listening right now and you're thinking about like, what are like little things that I can do to grow my practice? I think a lot of times, the biggest mistake we make is like we think that change and all the improvements are big jumps, right? Like tomorrow, I'm just gonna magically just like do X amount of push-ups or run extra amount of miles. But in reality, we all understand that you have to build onto that. One of the things that we can do right now is the reason why I have Dr. Blair Feldman on this podcast is that you can do little things to make your life easier, but also to bring a little bit more production and profits in your practice. And we're talking about retainers there. So in the spirit of that, how do people get started? What's a nifty thrifty deal you can give to our community? Because again, when we talk about nifty thrifty, we're not talking about, hey, we're trying to be the cheapest. We're just trying to be smart with our resources. And if you can save some time in your practice, if you can save your staff time in your practice, if you can almost like Ron Coe from the rotisserie machine set it and forget it, when it comes to retainers, that's a smart thing to do. So, Blair, what can you do for our community, for people who are like, okay, I'll give it a shot. Let's see how great these retainers are. I'll give it a shot. What can you do for our community for them to take advantage and start working with you on Retainer Club?
For sure. So, I mean, the only fee that we have, and it's a one-time fee, with Retainer Club to get started, is an onboarding fee. And, in that, we basically create your partner portal. We create the portal for your patients, the online store. We call it the shop page for your patients. We co-brand it with your logo. We give you marketing materials in English and Spanish, whatever you need. That's, involves a lot of our work and time to create. So the current, charge at the time of this recording is $17.99 to get that started. I think it's an incredible value. But I do agree, your listeners need deals, and they're these really entrepreneurial group, and they want to have incentives to get this started. So I'll give you two. One, if this is something you're like, I get it, I want to go all in, I want to do this. We'll take $500 off that for Glenn, and we'll make it $12.99. And I think that's an incredible deal. It's like, we're losing money on our end on it, but it's worth it because I know your practice is going to grow and we'll grow together. And Glenn and I talked about it on our last call about we got to make this win-win, and we're going to make it win-win for you. The other way, if you're really like, well, I don't totally get it, I think I get it, and I wish I could just try it for a little bit and not have that $12.99. I've got something that I think is really interesting, but it's definitely limited because it requires an incredible amount of our resources to make it happen. So for $99, we'll give your listeners 5 sets of retainers to do whatever you want with. But really, I'm going to tell you what the secret mission is on our team. We want to show you that we can convert that into actually $1,000 of sales for your practice. And that's why it takes our resources. So we're going to train your team, how to answer a phone. If the patient says, I lost a retainer, I need a retainer. If there's a conversation inside, maybe in your hygiene appointment, I want a retainer. We're going to help you do that. We're going to use the Retainer Club system to do that. We'll set our basic fee of $250 for a set of retainers. So with 5 retainers, we think we can easily get you to, 1,000 or more on that. And if you just want to use it for 5 retainers, that's okay. But maybe leave this for somebody who wants to turn this into $1,000. It is limited, but we have a space set up for people that want to try that. And if it does fill up, we'll see how it goes, and we will offer it again a second round.
I'll twist some arts here.
Blair,
let me ask you this. What if they say, I want to take advantage of both deals? I want to try it out because I want to see if the retainers are up to my standards. And when I see that it's up to my standards, dude, I'm going to get that $500 off because I want to go 100% with that. Could they do both?
Let's make it both. We'll do both.
Let's make it both. I love it.
And here's the deal.
Here's the thing, guys. I want people to understand this, is that core to their business model is that they want to work. Retainer Club, Dr. Feldman wants to work with other doctors. He's not sliding behind, going around our backs or anything. Like, he wants to work with us, and he wants to provide something. Again, he's an orthodontist. This is not some flimsy retainer that's just going to break apart right away. This has his name and reputation behind it. So I want people to understand that. But I think that is so important in this day and age where it seems like everyone's kind of like picking at us and trying to find ways to take business from us. You're stepping up and saying, man, I want us to make some money together. And I love that. Before we end the podcast here, what is your hopes for Retainer Club, not only for yourself, but for the dental community as a whole? Like, what is your hope behind Retainer Club?
Yeah. You made me think of the other thing we typically talk about when we're doing our discussions, when I'm lecturing or presenting. One of them is, looking at that example of Smile Direct Club, how it pulled patients away from their dentist, from their orthodontist, and, really disintermediated the doctor from treatment. And obviously it didn't work out well, but there's other companies that are going to fill that gap and that are already filling that space. We see the same thing on the retainer side. I mean, when I go onto my Instagram, I see Remy and Cheeky and all these direct to consumer companies. And it says to me a few things. And this is what I thought about Smile Direct Club. I thought, if they're doing this because there's a market out there, there's people that want that. And I need to think about that in my practice. And I think about the same thing with the direct retainers. You know, do you want to service these patients? Do you want to be involved in this and give your patients this service? Or do you want to just let them go and figure this out on their own and really go to these direct to consumer companies that want to cut you out and don't think you're that important? I mean, I think it's terrible. And that's one of what, long term, we really want to help practices do. We want to help them service their patients in a way that the patients expect to be treated. I want, when I need to see the doctor, I want to go into the office. And when I can just order something online, I want to be able to do that for myself. The other side is we really are on a mission to grow this idea of an online store for practices. So whether it's retainers, whether it's a sports mouth guard, whether it's retainer cleaner or other oral care products, we believe that you should have an online store that's generating money 24/7 and helping your patients really take better care of their teeth. It's just the convenience everyone wants. So that's our mission. When you meet us in 5 years, we're going to talk about this it's part of every practice. And I'm excited because I know your listeners are entrepreneurial, they're forward thinking, and this is a great opportunity. I appreciate it, Glenn.
Blair, thank you so much for jumping on. There's nothing else I can say to that. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in. We'll have all the information when it comes to Retainer Club in the show notes. Blair, thank you for coming on. I can't wait to bring you back on. We can talk about the success and all the other doctors just getting success in their practice. I'm so looking forward to that. But Blair, thank you so much for jumping on. Guys, we'll see you next time.